Hello and welcome to Gierok Farms. In today's video, we're going to be talking about another new purchase here on the farm. Dad has had this skid steer here for a while now. He's been trying it out, getting used to it. It is a Bobcat S66, the R series. In this video, we are going to be comparing this new skid steer to our old skid steer, some of the pros and cons, and then we're also going to be asking some questions to you guys on some changes we could be making to this new skid steer to fit our operation a little better. But wanted to preface too that this skid steer was purchased probably a year ago by now.
Seems like it, depending so much on the skid steer and the farms do. The S570 has been pretty good, and actually I've probably got more hours on that, and that's actually my third skid steer. We had a 742B Mitsubishi engine. That was my first one I bought back in the mid-90s.
That'd be a little gas.
That was a little gas, and that one was a 1,300 pound rating. And then I think it was the S85 they called it. And I think that one was a 1,800 or 1,900 pound, 1,850 pound rating, I think it was. This one here I think is 1,950. Yeah, this one's 1,950. The new one here, I gotta check again, 2,400. So the S85, the 570, and the 66, the frame is almost, the same as far as length and height and width and tire sizes and that far as getting, you get limited to where we can get in and out of. We got a few spots we gotta kind of think if we want to get, we do got that big end loader if you really want to, you need
something real heavy. Yep.
Something real heavy anyway, and you can, we can go to that if we had to.
So yeah, for our operation, the skid steer, especially this size, fits really well for managing cattle feed and manure and all that. For the cattle side of the operation, this is a very necessary piece.
It's always been, and there's actually a neat little what do you call it, like history of
yeah, there's a documentary of Bobcat's history and how they started and how they used to be three-wheelers, and
they started out to clean out chicken barns, and how these two guys, I think they're from Wisconsin, these two old fellas, and they started it and ended up merging up with a company to help them build these, and that's how they got going. It's really interesting how they came to be. So really, again, we're depending on it so much, and like I said, we had this thing bought a long time ago, and even the dealers don't even know, the supply chain is backed up or what's going to happen, and when they're going to get theirs in. And they said, well, we'll let you know when we know. We got nothing they can tell you. So it's more of like insurance, and I've thought about trading. I know the trade value on a skid steer sounds kind of wild, but you can almost get as much as you paid for it new. Yeah. But then the new one is so over the top costly. They did bring me some used one out here just to try out that was more comparable to this model, because there's always those things you wonder, if what you should get. It was hand control, and that was really kind of comparing apples to oranges. So I never really got the feel, but we've been Bobcat, always been foot control. So I thought, why make it complicated? All of us people running it here got used to that. But the thing that scares me the most on all new machines is the electronics they're putting in them. Like this one here, your foot pedal is still direct action hydraulics, so you got your pedal, and then this rod here, that actually goes back underneath the cab there and actually opens and shuts a valve. And that'll control your tilt and your boom up and down. And when you stop, it stops right there where your foot makes it stop. And on this new one, which I know there's some settings, and I still don't, I've tried reading the owner's manual, but I suppose if I have trouble sleeping, I'll have to review it again. But anyway, when I stop, it moves this much more again. And same both ways, and kind of drives me crazy because I'm used to the old way yet, and then to try to get used to this. The other thing I've noticed, even my 742B, the brake on there was a step in the middle that it basically was a clamp, and they had that big nut on there that you could tighten a little bit once it started to wear. But like if we were going to pour concrete and we want to push it up against the form or lean it up against something to hold it in place for whatever reason, you could come right up to it and then use your foot to put the brake on, and it stayed right there where you stopped it. Both of these are kind of the same that way, where it'll back up maybe an inch or 2 or 3 before it actually clicks in. I think there's a better way. Even those newer John Deeres, when you put them in park, If they move 1/8 of an inch, that's it. You'll hear click in if it ain't quite, but it's not that it runs away 2 or 3 inches yet.
Before we get too far, that's something I wanted to ask you guys with the electronic over hydraulic. Any of you that have switched from the older style to the newer style, what settings are you running in your monitor? What percentage of sensitivity to get the same kind of feel as your older?
Get its most original. So that's something I didn't realize when we purchased this, as far as settings. And the other thing that's really interesting, so they got this thing on here, ride control they call it. And I think it has something to do where there's a button you can press that. So if you're going over some real rough terrain with a bucket load of feed or gravel or whatever it is.
Or moving sensitive pallets.
Yeah, it's not jumping like this. It'll kind of glide it, you know, for you more.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the same with, as you're raising, it's auto leveling, right?
Then they got, then there's a leveling too. And so after they brought this out here, he tells me that I got 20 hours of the ride control and the self-leveling. So once the machine exceeds 20 hours, that shuts off. It's almost kind of freaky when you think about it, that it's actually, so I didn't buy that feature because they did ask me if I wanted it. And I said, no, they said you can add it later. But what I didn't realize is just a matter of the computer going into it and doing it, unlocking it and allowing it, but you have to pay. So really what it is everything is on these machines already from factory. Years ago, it was more they came out with components and added them onto the machine and things like that. It wasn't already in it.
Since we're back here, let's open up both the engine bays and look at the differences there.
I mean, I think it was a year or so ago we went to Farm Technology Days. They did have these.
Yep.
They had these models there already, and they did put some of the components in the door. The batteries normally in here on that one, they got it up under the cab. I'll give them an A on that one. It's cleaner and probably a safer place for it than right back here near all this stuff, the motor and everything.
Yeah, if any of you have ever worked on a skid steer, you know how tight it can get in there and how limited you are with space and getting around or getting tools in there or your parts in and out. It's a very compact system. Here's a glance at the older skid steer to compare.
Yeah, and then you see how your battery it's kind of put in there a little bit of an angle, and if you have to work on here, you pretty much need some child's hands to get in there and do it right.
Almost like an afterthought where they just found a place and threw it in there. An obvious one, you can see the engine sits very different in this older one versus this newer one. It sits the opposite way versus this one sits the long ways.
And I think it's always a struggle with the skid steers because they got to keep them compact. It seems like what they're doing, the lift rating is getting higher and higher, but the machine is staying the same size. I've noticed that in the tractors too. You know, they're putting more horsepower on the same frame. Then you got your fuel tank here on the side, which on this one is underneath the motor. It's down in there a ways, and you could only imagine what kind of shape that is. It's almost molded to fit.
Speaking of fuel tanks, the one thing I'm happy to see is I know some manufacturers have gone to where their fuel tank is in the door, and I'm happy that Bobcat decided not to do that, at least on this model. Especially in tight quarters like we are, I think I'd hate to have our fuel system be attached to the door. That could be bumping stuff, and
seems like it would get rattled. And
now we have to worry about is this cooler here, which is still sensitive, but
yeah, they got screening and stuff, but that's not very hardy. If a branch or something would happen to go up in there, it could. Where the other one, it's all up on top, and same here. There's quite a bit to this. It gets you up a little higher where you can
access your fan and clean everything out a lot nicer.
And there's something with the way the airflow was on this one too. This one I've noticed you get a lot of strong stuff gets sucked down in there and gets in around the motor and back in under the cab. Something with this one is somehow the opposite way. I noticed they put some screens in here and some things to try to prevent some of that. And you always think of the fire hazard of these things and that.
Yep, skid steers build up a lot of chaff, a lot of dust, a lot of material gets stuck down in the belly of the machine. That's something I'm super excited to see on this new one, how that does over time as screens start to wear out and everything. Is the air flowing the way they claim it is to help keep that debris
you got like the construction industry is probably bigger than the agricultural industry. Basically the same machine, they put tracks on it or whatever the company wants. You got this gravel dust. And on a farm, you got hay and straw.
Yep.
It's a whole different type of material that could cause problems.
And this model is under that 74 horsepower rating. How many horses is this? I believe it's the same motor. They just tune them a little different based on your size.
It's right at the threshold of wherever that is where you got to add that extra fuel.
Yep. So this is no def. It avoided the def with the horsepower, which chassis wise we didn't want to jump up any bigger anyways, so it worked out.
See,
well
I was not familiar with these new numbers at all, even when I bought this one here. And then that's what your salesman's job is, to say, he comes out and he kind of asks you what you want, what he kind of feels you out. And I say, hey, sell me a machine that's as comparable as you can to what I already have, because this is fitting us great. And then he came up with this model. But kind of what really got almost discouraging is the time it took to get this.
Yeah, that was a big downside of this.
We got a Bobcat dealer pretty close to us, and they're kind of at the mercy of whatever Bobcat does. And sometimes you wonder well, I may buy or update one every 15 years or something like that, and then you got construction companies that may 6, 8, 10 of them a year. They're going to be first on the list because they're going to be repeat customers, and you always kind of wonder about those things, but it's all business, I guess. So.
Well, we got it here now, thankfully, and we're able to try it out and get used to it here.
Yeah, and I've never been a cab guy. The door for this one is like brand new up on the shelf here, collecting dust, and I suppose if someday we were to trade or something, they would have a brand new door to go with it. But because we're getting in and out all the time, and right away now using this one, we were moving big square bales around with it. I guess I'm going to try to keep it out of the manure. Unless something goes wrong with this one, just because we'll probably use it other places more. And even if my boom or my lift is up a little bit, this door comes against things here, and I think if I keep going like I am here, it's going to be broke. So take a good look at it why it's not, because it will get broke. The only reason I'm not so excited about taking it off because my cab is pretty clean right now, and if I'm not using it in the manure, typically your boots and stuff aren't quite as dirty and you're not dragging all that in. And then of course all the electronics. And that's really the part that really bothers me the most is how are these things going to be when they get old?
Or wet or dusty, yeah.
All those things. So I think far as performing and that, I'm not going to complain about this thing. It does seem like a very well-built, hardy machine. And they have to be to compete with this market. I imagine LED lighting, there's a lot of things that are on this one the other one didn't have.
I know that someone's going to ask, and we already kind of touched on it. Someone's going to ask, why Bobcat? Why did you stick with Bobcat over the years? One, we got a dealer really close, and right now there's an individual that's worked at that location or in that town forever that knows a lot about Bobcats, so that's helpful that we got that knowledge base there.
So the first skid steer I have ever ran in my life was 1987. October of 87, my dad bought a 642B. It was basically the little brother to the 742B. They both had Mitsubishi's motors, and that one would lift 1,000. Oh, that was my baby. And I was just a teenager, and my dad was a pretty heavy-set man already, so he rarely would crawl in there. Us boys pretty much kind of took that thing and used it for everything it was. So then when I came here again, they were offering the 743, and of course I was using my dad's the first, I think it was maybe up to 2 years, but I couldn't bring it here all the time. It was loading it and hauling it. He needed it too. So I'd get it here maybe 4 to 5 times a year to do what I had to do and shovel everything by hand in between. Yeah, you get to know the machine, and I think a lot of it is where the controls are all located. So that was another thing between this one and this one, like the high speed, low speed is on the opposite handle. That's things like that really kind of bother me, that they don't keep the lever or the switch in the same spot. Even the quick attach. I mean, my first 2 skid steers, you had to crawl out of the skid steer and then shut them manually like this. That's why these arms are actually in here. And then they came out with those quick attaches, and that's more because of the cab, and you're not climbing out and in as often, maybe safer than it could be too. And so otherwise, the way the seat bar, I've noticed this is a little sensitive, moving some square bales. It locked up on me once, and it's kind of like you got to reset all your electronics again, put up the seat bar, maybe shut it off, and then restart everything, and then it works again. I noticed it's more sensitive than this one was even. Just something to get used to.
That's a little bit of an overview of the new skid steer purchase. We wanted to put this together because we know some of you have been seeing this in the background and asking about it. So we thought we'd put a video together for you guys, and I'm sure you guys will see it in more and more videos as time goes on where it's actually in action. But like we said, we're gonna try to keep this one nice for a while and keep that one.
It's probably not the worst idea, but I got a feeling eventually something will click on this one where we're waiting for parts and things like that. And the other thing is, it's just like the balers and things, we'll try not to keep them in the same building.
Yep.
You know, for security reasons. If something would happen, you wouldn't lose, kind of the theory of not keeping all your eggs in one basket.
It's a bit of insurance now having two.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said earlier, the money in the bank today isn't exactly making us what it should. So if you put it in equipment that holds value, it's going to come back.
And I think this will make us run a little smoother on some of them winter days when all us boys are here and we got like Christmas or something going on. Because I know last winter there was a couple situations like that where there was more guys and not enough machines. So
well, yeah,
we'll
you
have
wait.
two machines going at one time.
Yeah, one could be fetching the bedding while the other one's finishing scraping the pen, and that's really probably what's going to happen. This guy's going to have the bale fork on, and then
or be moving silage, and then this one will be cleaning pens or something.
Or scraping snow. Yeah, because usually when it snows, the skid steer gets kind of a workout with the snow and cleaning all your pens because of the mess the snow made with it. And that. Be good. And I think if a person's going to have two of something, that you have the things that you
use the most.
Use the most and may not necessarily want to be without very long.
That's going to be it for the video. Make sure to leave plenty of comments about what brand you guys run on your operations, and we'd be interested to hear pros and cons of that, and anything you know about these newer models and how to make them perform a little better hydraulically like the old one, or any other features you guys would recommend us using or watching out for, if that ride control is something worth having or not. And anyways, just let us know your thoughts down in the comments. We really appreciate you guys watching and sticking to the end, and we will see you guys in the next one.